Hello, it's Sherry Dion with the Bulimia Freedom Project, and this is the second video in my video series, The Basics of EFT Tapping. Okay, so in the first video, I described what EFT tapping is. In this video, I'm going to talk about the science behind EFT and why it works. But to understand why tapping works so well, not just for anxiety, fear, or trauma, but also for bulimia, it's important to understand the body's stress response. Stress begins in the amygdala, which is an almond-shaped component located in the limbic system of the midbrain. Now, we're going to get a little bit technical here, but stick with me. I'm going to make this very easy to understand. The amygdala is sometimes referred to as the body's smoke detector. It encodes our negative experiences with a negative emotional charge in the body, which could be anger or fear or anxiety or whatever. These emotional charges are then attached to the memory of that negative experience. So anytime you think about that experience, your body reacts with that attached negative emotion. Anytime you think about that experience, the limbic system warns you of potential danger because you've been there before. You have a memory of that negative experience and a reaction that's attached to it. So to give you an extreme example, when I was about 10 years old, I was bitten twice by a German Shepherd, once on my arm and once on my throat. And as you can imagine, it scared the crap out of me. Anytime I saw or thought about or came in contact with the German Shepherd after that experience, my body would react. That experience, that memory, that emotional charge was encoded in my body. So anytime these negative experiences come up again, or anytime we think about the negative experience, the limbic system will warn us of potential danger. When it senses danger, it tells our brains to initiate a physiological stress response called the fight or flight response. The human fight or flight response kicks in very rapidly in response to a perceived threat, and it gets the body ready for life or death action, as our ancient ancestors had to do when they encountered an animal in the wild. The fight or flight response sits at the core of our brains. It's always turned on and it's always ready to go, but with few actual physical threats to act on. However, the same fight or flight response happens when we experience common negative emotions such as anger, fear, worry, guilt, etc. Because survival is our most fundamental need, there's nothing slow, restrained, or casual about the way our bodies respond. When we feel fear, when we feel anxiety, which are perceived threats to our body, we kick into action. Our bodies create an overproduction of the stress hormones, cortisol and adrenaline. Our muscles tense up, our blood pressure goes up, our heartbeat goes up, our blood sugar rises so that we're ready for action. The problem is that in our modern society, we live in a world with very few threats to our physical survival. I mean, when was the last time you saw or were chased by a wild animal? Unlike our ancestors who, after the wild animal threat was over, could relax and go on about their day, we, on the other hand, are subject to a complex assortment of stimuli and stressors, and that means that our stress levels remain higher for longer periods of time. Our bodies are in fight or flight response more frequently. This stress can activate triggers that can lead to binging and purging for those of us with eating disorders or other negative responses. When you experience a craving or you're triggered by a certain situation, your body goes into fight or flight mode. If your brain has been trained to respond to stress by binge eating an entire pizza, that's probably how you're going to respond after a stressful day at work or after an argument with your significant other. This is where tapping becomes such a powerful tool. What tapping does so effectively is it bridges the gap between your body and your mind. It separates the thought from the emotion. It dissolves the emotion so that when you think that thought again in the future, it doesn't have a charge or negative emotion attached to it anymore. When you tap while focusing on negative thoughts or feelings, you relax the body and you send a calming message to the brain, telling it that it can relax too. Tapping quickly halts the fight or flight response and it lowers our cortisol levels. It allows our bodies to return to a more relaxed state where the impulse to binge and purge is decreased significantly. So going back to the stress and pizza example, with EFT, you're able to change the way your brain reacts to stress and pizza. Instead of having an overwhelming feeling of needing to devour an entire pizza when you're in a stressful situation, you can stop, you can tap, and immediately reduce the stress. You dissolve the negative emotion with the tapping and can now logically decide whether you really want the pizza or not. And most of the time, the answer is no. After working with this technique for over 7 years now, I'm still amazed at how quickly tapping can change behavior. After tapping on the feeling of stress or anxiety related to food, it's fascinating to learn that the stress or anxiety is not about the food. It's usually an underlying emotional issue. Once you use tapping to clear the stress or the emotion that's causing the binging and purging, you're able to eat normally again. You're able to look at your body differently. You're able to lose weight and stabilize your weight as well. The situations or the foods that once triggered you to binge and purge simply lose their power. What I'm so passionate about with tapping is the ability that everyone has at their own fingertips to experience immediate relief. Once you know tapping, you always have a tool to support you through times of stress. It's incredibly self-empowering. Okay, so that's how EFT works. In the next video, I'm going to describe the 9 tapping points that are used in the basic recipe of EFT tapping. I'll see you in the next video.